Hello, and welcome to today's webinar on Caring Beyond Expectations. My name is Amanda Rothengast, and I will be your moderator for today. Before we introduce our speaker, I would like to let you know a bit more about our webinars. Both Sanford Inspire and Sanford Harmony host these webinars where thought leaders and educators share best teaching practices and tools to support social emotional learning. These presentations are the opinions and content of our guest speakers and may not necessarily be a direct representation of Sanford Harmony or Sanford Inspire. As a reminder, this webinar is being recorded and you will receive a copy of the slide deck and a recording within 24 to 48 hours. Also, if you have any questions for our speaker, please feel free to use your question box on your GoToWebinar control panel. Now, without further ado, I would like to introduce you to our speaker, Dr. Brian McDaniel. Dr. Brian McDaniel is a speaker, writer, advocate, dream builder, and music educator who is passionate about helping students overcome obstacles through academic opportunities. As an educator for 14 years, he has raised over $1 million through grants, donations, sponsorships, and fundraisers to ensure access for every child in his program. He teaches from the foundational belief that all students need to feel the joy of success every day, as it only takes one great experience to change the trajectory in a child's life. Dr. McDaniel is the director of bands and instrumental music at Rancho Mirage High School and an adjunct professor in the School of Arts and Science at Brandman University. Please join me in welcoming Dr. McDaniel, the 2018 California Teacher of the Year.
Thank you, Amanda. Before we get started, I'd like to know who we're talking to. Can we launch the poll and see what people's experiences are? So if you're a pre-service teacher, let us know, or if you're in your first 5, that's an exciting time. Maybe you are a more seasoned teacher, or perhaps you're even on the later end of your career and you're looking forward to retirement in the next few years. Or maybe you're not a teacher at all and just joined us tonight for some special reason, and let us know in the text box. Do we still have poll numbers coming in, Amanda?
Yes, go ahead and continue to talk while the poll numbers are coming in.
So let me tell you a little bit about myself. I grew up in the Coachella Valley, which is in Southern California. I kind of grew up as an impoverished student. I wanted to be in band for as long as I can remember, and unfortunately, because of life circumstances, I never was able to rent one. For the first 3 years, I was denied access to music, the thing that I knew I wanted to do with my life. I literally told my band director, one day I'm going to be a band teacher and I'm going to make sure that everybody's going to have access to music. I'm going to buy so many instruments that if a kid wants to play the saxophone, they can play the saxophone. And I'm happy to say throughout my career that I've never turned a student away, that I've always been able to find a way to allow them to play the instruments that they wanted to play and to have experiences that they normally wouldn't get. Our students have performed in New York and Chicago, all throughout California. Just really had a great time. And we're going to talk more about those students coming up and how we got there to have that type of success. How about now, Amanda? Do we need a minute or two?
Oh, now the poll results have come in. So we have a very diverse audience today. We have 60% in a non-teaching role. We have 12% 6 years or more. We have 10% in their first 5 years. We have 10% who are pre-service and 8% who are close to retirement.
Well, congratulations to those 8% close to retirement, and thank you for your service. I'm hoping some of the things that I have to offer are stuff that you could use. Being honest, how I became an award-winning teacher is through the shoulders of so many amazing teachers. Teachers like David Zimick, who was my science teacher in the 8th grade, who on day one, before computers and Chromebooks and all that other fun jazz. He went through the Cume files and looked at the pictures of his incoming students and memorized their names. And he would meet us at the door and shake our hands. And that was one of those moments where an adult came and said, good morning, Mr. McDaniel, and it made all the difference. From that relationship was built off of just a handshake, and it really shaped me into the human being that I've became. I still work with Dave Zimick, Mr. Zimick or Mr. Z, and he's just an amazing man. As we're going forward, though, I want you to think about the 5 people you spend the most time with. For your students, you're probably one of those people, and the type of relationship you have. Like, what type of teacher are you? Are you a benevolent teacher? Are you authoritative? Is it my way or the highway? Are you Gumby and you bend over and twist and turn just to make your kids happy and give them what they need? Each kid needs something a little different, and there's not a one size fits all or a silver bullet. So, knowing your kids. But what I'd like you to consider is 5, 10, 20 years from now, how are you going to be remembered? Are you going to remember because you taught the quadratic formula? Or are you going to be remembered because you were the shoulder to cry on? Are you going to be remembered because you always had a smile on your face? We really need to hone those practices. And the more that we could shine light onto what we're doing, the better teachers we're going to be. And the time goes by really fast. I still feel like I'm a sophomore in high school. I don't know why sophomore year is the year that I'm stuck with, and it was over 20 years ago. But the same thoughts that I had then, I kind of still have now. Funny enough, I'm still wondering who I'm going to be when I grow up and what I'm going to do. And I think our students are in the same boat, that the minute that school starts, it feels like it's already over. Like, I can't believe that Christmas is right around the corner. And I know some people are going to say we're still in November, hold off with the Christmas stuff, but it is what it is. I think you get what I'm saying, that we really need to make sure that every second counts, that the 180 days that our students have in our classroom that are meaningful, and that's a good investment of both of our times. So I'm going to ask you to do something, and it's going to be a little weird because you're behind a computer screen or on your phone or whatever device you're watching me on, but I want you to lift your hand as high as it'll physically go. Do you got it? Now go ahead and raise it higher. I bet you rose your hand, even if it was a millimeter, it still went up. And it doesn't matter if you stood up in your chair or climbed the ladder. The fact is that you were able to give more. And that's the type of stuff we need to get from our students. Our students will always give us their best efforts when we ask for it, but then we need to ask for more. And we need to ask more out of ourselves, because good's never good enough when we can get better. And we always want to be the best versions of ourselves. We want to make sure that our students understand the progression of life. That, for instance, teaching music. Many of my students come not able to read music, not even to hold their horn or to produce sound. And we have to get through some troubling times of building up routine and breath support and putting fingers in the right places. Eventually, after enough bad notes have been played, good notes can eventually grow. And the more they practice, the better they are. And my students go from being novice to virtuoso in a matter of a few years. And we can do the same thing across all subjects. Doesn't matter what you teach. Also, you don't even need to be a teacher to teach. For my parents who are listening, I was quite surprised that 60% of the people who are chiming in are not educators, or at least don't identify as educators. This is a little on the fly, but can you, in the text box, what do you do? And why was this of interest to you? And Amanda, I'll call on you in a couple more slides to report back of who that audience is. Oh, I'm gonna have you write even more. So while you're writing who you are, I have an activity for you. Just 3 words. What are 3 things you wish you could offer your students? So for me right now, we're getting close to the end of the semester, and I wish I can give every single one of my kids the confidence to approach their teachers, their classes, their peers with whatever they need to communicate. It might be taking a science exam, and a lot of kids get nervous and they're afraid of asking a question that's going to lead up to that exam. And so they rather take an F than have the confidence to speak out. Another thing that concerns me is I don't think some of my kids are getting enough food. I know that we provide lunch and breakfast at our school, but when they go home, I'm afraid they just don't have enough food in their bellies. And that's something that I, so I'd put confidence in food for my first two words. And finally, for my last word is that they have joy in their life every day. I really pride myself of creating an opportunity for my kids to experience joy. Music brings so much joy to so many different people. And so my students, I'm hoping that if they were to write this down of what are three things that Dr. McDaniel wants to give to them, I'd hope that joy would be at least one of those words. Amanda, what do you have a first? Who's listening to us? Who are those other 60% that are non-educator folk?
Yes, well, they are in education. We have quite a few school counselors. We have quite a few after-school staff. We have a few principals. So definitely folks who are supporting educators and education in many ways.
Oh,
And we have many
absolutely.
responses. Yeah, we have many responses coming through right now. We have confidence, motivation, kindness, sharing, food, encouragement, safety, love, hope, parent support. So a wide range of answers: time, confidence, safety, enthusiasm.
These are all beautiful. So I'm going to ask once again with the whole raising our hand, I'm going to ask you to think bigger. For me, I wanted to make my kids into a world-class band. And once again, I started off with four walls and a few chairs and not enough instruments and really no music. And so to build that infrastructure, it took a lot of time. And it took really thinking outside the box. I started thinking and looking around at what other programs are doing. And for instance, if you go around saying, oh, we're a poor group of kids who want to do something, can you help us out? That typically doesn't do that well. We have a lot of people using that approach and they find meager results. Another thing is how many chocolate bars do you have to sell to raise $1 million? And I'll help you out with it. It's about 3 million. You get about 33% on those type of fundraisers. So I had to go a different route. I started writing grants and I started making partnerships with people that I normally wouldn't be working with, especially as a music teacher in a desert community. With building my bridge, I started going first to all the people that I work with, the dentists, the doctors, and instead of asking for money, I would just tell them about what I'm doing. I'm going to build a world-class band. And my first stop is I want them to be California State champions in marching band. I think that's a good place to start. And then I'm going to have them also be a internationally jazz and wind symphony and make sure that they're acclaimed at doing that. And we need to raise about, I think my first trip was $65,000. So as a brand new teacher right out of college, I set my eye on New York. I'm going to take my concert band to New York because it seemed like the furthest place in this country from where I was. And we got there. We ended up raising money in very unconventional ways. The things that were happening in my city was we were selling houses. It was before the bubble burst. And I had my jazz band play out in front of a house. And if that house sold while my band was playing in front of it, and we were really pushing for it, I think we ended up getting $15,000 for that first house. After I raised that $15,000, I leveraged it to raise more money to let everybody know, hey, we raised 50 grand. Can we get matching uh, funds? That first year, we raised over $180,000 to buy the kids brand new uniforms, a brand new drum line, and all the low brass equipment that our school really needed. Um, Grants were pivotal. So I'm more than happy to talk to people individually, and at the end, I'll share my contact information. But I really want you thinking, what do you want your kids to do, and how are you going to get there? Start planting those puzzle pieces down to build your own bridge. So let me introduce you to my family. On the top left of your screen, you'll see my blood family and my wife, and those are, yes, all my children. Valerian, the hand that we're all touching, or all of our hands are touching my wife's belly, and that's my son Valerian. is now 1.5. But speaking of my son, the gentleman to the right in the white marching band uniform is somebody who also identifies as my son. His name's Zabion, and he was one of my very, very first students. And I didn't realize what struggles he had until I got to know him. So back in the day, we would have marching band practice at 5:45 in the morning, which seems insane. And Zabion lived 3 miles away from the school. He didn't tell anybody that he would get up at 3 so he could start walking at 3:30 to make sure he would get to school on time. He was living a life that was quite insane. I mean, the amount of hours this young man was putting in for his studies and his commitment to his craft. The reason why he's wearing white against the blue is he was a drum major. He was identified for his leadership qualities, and he actually led our marching band. Him and I had this really big dream. We sat down and we created the regiment. The regiment is every version of the regiment. We were going to be regimented into how we had our kids line up and how we play and how our horns look. But more so, we were building community. We had a bunch of kids who were poor, and we wanted to make them rich in love. We wanted to make them rich in habits. And I'm proud to say it's been 15 years, but Zabion still calls. I got a great call this year. He said, "Hey, Pops, congratulations, you're a grandpa." And he showed me pictures of his daughter. Having connections with your students could be anything you want. They could be there for a year, a decade, or the rest of your life. Zabion's going nowhere. And quite honestly, every kid that's in these pictures are going nowhere. They're my family. And they're the family I chose to have. In some ways, some of them test me. The young man holding the tassels, it was a struggle to get him to cross the graduation line. He was a handful. You would quite say he was a pain in my butt. He made teaching hard, but he made me a better teacher for it. And I think I made him a better student. If I said the sky was blue, he would say it was red, and he challenged me every moment, so I had to stay on my toes. Likewise, he was the type of kid that would practice probably 10 hours a day. Once again, an insane amount of time, but he wanted to be the best. I'm proud to say Erasmo is the best. He works in the Caribbean and through South America selling pool supplies, and he's received many accolades for being a top salesman. The sweetheart in the middle, Alicia, she was married just this last month. All these kids are my family, and we've had adventures throughout the world, and we continue to have them. And that's something I hope that you guys that are listening aim for. I've had a lot of opportunities being the California Teacher of the Year and being a Global Teacher Prize finalist, where I have sat in at meetings across the tables from CEOs, and when they talk about what I do, it's almost like they want to bottle me up like Coca-Cola and sell me to all the different teachers. And it's a real simple recipe. You just need to love your kids. You treat them like they're your own and let them be your own. And it's amazing what can happen when you care about another human being. So in the text box, please tell me who you are and what do you do for your kids. For me, I could be a politician and advocate for my kids. I actually became a politician to advocate for my kids. I was the commissioner of community and arts in the city of Desert Hot Springs to make sure that the sound ordinance allowed our kids to practice at night, because we rather hear the sounds of drums beating than gunfire. In a lot of ways, we pulled our kids out of the gangs and out of other high-risk behaviors by keeping them busy, by putting them to work and giving them purpose. Sometimes I'm out of this world for my kids, or I'm a cartoon character, and all the time I'm Superman. They put me there. My kids are what give me purpose, and because of them, I'm the richest man in the world. Now, you could argue with me and type in the comment books, "You're crazy. I don't see you on the Forbes 500." But if you see how my kids look at me, that's something that money doesn't buy. And if you could see what it's like to be in my classroom, then you could see what love looks like. So Amanda, what are some of the responses? What are our people for their students?
We're getting some great responses. For my kids, I'm a second mom or just a friend who listens and cares. I am the village. I am the advocate. I'm a mentor, mother, friend, educator, nurse. I hope I give them strength, happiness, and inspiration.
These are all beautiful, beautiful things. So to be able to love somebody and to teach somebody, you got to know them. We have to really know our students. I don't know how many of you would go to an airport without any bags or a ticket or anything and just jump on a plane, not knowing how long it's going to go, where you're going to go, and if you're ever coming back. And I feel like education does that to kids a lot. We're preparing them for a future that we don't even understand as adults. I mean, for goodness sakes, my cell phone here, which I'm using to tell time with, um, replaced my calculator. You see, in the first grade, I had this amazing teacher by the name of Mrs. Oglesby, and my dad bought me one of those Casio solar panel calculators, and I used to play with it all the time. I would make kids laugh by writing inappropriate math equations to get certain words. And she used to tell me, Brian, you need to do math long form with pieces of paper because you're not going to have that calculator with you at all times. Well, Mrs. Oglesby, I got something way better than a calculator, and it does all the calculations. And I have a feeling that some of our students are going to say the same thing to us in the next 20 years, that life as we know it has changed. But understanding our students and where they're coming from, we have to look backwards. We have to understand what they value and where they're going and give them those tickets to ride. I'm really sad to report that many of our students start off education very good, but very quickly decline. When you look at the transition between fifth grade and sixth grade, we're losing a lot of kids, maybe because of low test scores or not reading level or mathematics, but a lot of them are just jaded because of bullying and because of the cyber bullying epidemic that's happening. So how do we help our kids? We help our kids by building them up, by finding out what their interests are, by allowing them to shine and grow and be the absolute best. We also need to remember that every day we need to choose. Oh, we have a guest appearance. That's Valerian. That was the baby that I showed you a picture of. We're going to move forward. No worries. I don't know if this has ever happened, Amanda. This was not what we planned. I'm going to take a 30-second break, and I'm going to run and grab my kid and get him to where he needs to go. But we're going to all choose joy, and I'm choosing joy right now.
No problem. I will read some of the other responses from before. I am their voice at times. I am the experience giver. I have taken students to sports, games, radio, anything to give them more experiences. I am the school mom. My students appreciate what I bring to school every day, energy and happiness.
Perfect. That's a great transition. So we could choose joy no matter what. I mean, not to get grim, but you could be dying of cancer and still choose to look at the bright side of life. The fact that you are breathing, the fact that you can communicate. No matter what I'm going through, no matter what turmoil is happening in my life, I'm going to be the ray of sunshine for my students. Once again, it's about purpose. If we purposely serve and we're a servant leader, then we could overcome our own obstacles by shining a pathway for the future, by making Johnny and Susie and Sally and all the different kids in our classrooms happy, and by giving them their own purpose. The greatest, well, you know what? I almost gave my whole talk away. But I want to tell you the greatest treasure of my life, the proudest moment, and I'll give you a hint, has nothing to do with awards. But before we get there, we need to talk about how we could recharge ourselves. because if we're not at our best, we're just giving everybody what's left over. And my students deserve more than leftovers. We don't get to choose what comes into our life, but we get to choose what stays there. So no matter what, if you've had hard times, I'm super sorry, and I hope that you're going to get over them soon. But don't let that define you. We want to change our mentality from being victims to being victors, to being champions. And that's kind of what I've done with my own life. I always have four things to look forward to: my daily, my weekly, my monthly, my yearly. I'd like you, and I'm going to go through them all, but don't feel pressure to do that. But I'd like to hear what you guys do daily, weekly, monthly, or yearly to refill your own cup. So before I do anything, I take a shower, and it has less to do with cleaning my hair and, cleanliness, and more to do with sanity. I don't know if you saw, but I'm the father of 6 children. And by having so many kids, the only time I get any time to think is when I'm in the shower. And so it sets my day to allow me to really think about what I need to do, what I want to accomplish, and it gives me a launching point, if you will. Conversely, I read every night for about 15 minutes before I go to bed. So much so that as I'm laying down, turning pages, my eyes start to get heavy, and then that's when I know it's time to put the book down and go to sleep. I'm preparing myself by having my regimented routine to make things happen. Last but not least, on my daily, my family time. I mean, we had a special guest appearance by Valerian. I love my son. I love all my children. And as much time as I get to spend with them, and sometimes it's just a FaceTime call in between a passing period. Those moments buoy me up so that I'm able to do this very hard job. Teaching is the only job where you stay awake at night thinking about other people's kids. And you're wondering if they're okay, if they have enough food, if they're warm enough, if they have AC because it's 1,000 degrees outside in Palm Springs. Um, but that's kind of what I do on my daily. On my weekly, and this is for any of my conductor people out there, that you know what I'm talking about. If you conduct music and your hands are above your heart for more than 8 hours a day, this is money. I used to run myself into the ground and basically Monday through Friday grind it out, have a competition on Saturday, and then sleep all day Sunday. But I found a magic trick, and the magic trick is your Wednesday. Every Wednesday, I have a date with my wife. Sometimes they're big dates, sometimes they're small dates. Also, on every Wednesday, I go and eat sushi. I love sushi. I love Japan. I can't wait to go back. But that's just something I do. And then I also have a standing appointment for an hour-long massage. And I know that seems like a vanity thing, but it's more to do with mental health and with physical health. Being on your feet all day long as a teacher and moving around, especially if you're conducting music, you need to have those muscles replenish. And it's also a mental break, if you will. So if I know every Wednesday, and today's Wednesday, I have a treat looking up for me, then I can get through Monday and Tuesday. On Wednesday, my cup is filled up to the brim, and I can get once again to the weekend. And it's this never ending cycle of replenishment that I'm never burning out, that I'm always optimal, that I could always give my best work for my students. Monthly, I go out and get a change of pace. I typically go to the ocean, to San Diego or Los Angeles, or I go up into the mountains to Big Bear or Idlewild, just so I get a change of pace. I get to commune with nature. And I think a lot of us need to unplug from our phones, find a way to just get out. And last but not least, the yearly, the family vacation. Typically, my family, were cruisers. And once again, if you kind of look at all this time, not once do I say, I'm plugging into my phone and jumping on Facebook and doing any of this stuff. All four of these activities, the daily, weekly, monthly, and yearly, I'm making it about the people who matter most, my family, myself, and so I can give to others. Amanda, what were some of the responses? I'm interested in let's go with daily.
Many responses were coming in, and several said reading or spending time with family, friends, exercise, cooking. Some were saying that weekly trips with family, time at church, daily I meditate, daily taking a bath, reading, just venting,
I love
daily
that.
talking to the grandkids,
Man, this
daily time for reflection and quiet time, walking in nature. And we have one for weekly, doing an art project, working out.
this is all fantastic. I'm going to borrow the working out one. Next time I give this presentation, that's going to be one of my new ones. So thank you to all that said that. Overall, I think we're all kind of cut from the same cloth. If you've been in teaching for just a little bit, there's a reason for it. And for my first fivers, you guys are in a real rough patch because that's typically the risk zone for teachers. A lot of teachers leave the profession in their first 5 years. So having a strategy to replenish yourself, to make sure that you're strong to get through the hard times is going to be key. This is the best profession in the world. I get to work with scientists and rock stars. It's just they don't know it yet. And I get to be the guy who helps them get there. I love being a talent scout. So let me introduce you to the guy that I really teach. His name's Brian McDaniel. He's in the 7th grade. Unfortunately, he just lost his father and he's really upset. He's living in foster care and he's not really doing what he wants. And yes, I pulled this picture from a friend's yearbook. Um, I didn't buy a yearbook. I couldn't buy a yearbook, but this was me in the 7th grade. And I didn't go up and tell everybody this is all the stuff I'm going through. For some reason, I thought everybody kind of knew. And I had no idea that I was just doing this all on my own. But I came up with this recipe for success, if you will. And it's the old, I guess, bride's poem, if you will. Something old, something new, something borrowed, something blue. But I'm going to repurpose it to build empathy and trust. If you try to push curriculum without having a relationship, you're setting yourself up for doom. So, something old. Feel free to talk in those quick moments whenever you can to interject something about yourself. Maybe when you were in college or how you met your spouse or something that's significant. Um, Even more so, maybe you're not offering it, but you find out something old about them, about their ancestry, about how we all ended up in this room right now. For me, coming to the desert was because my dad got a job as a grocery store worker and he uprooted us and moved us away from our family and our farm and all this other stuff. Something new. This is kind of a risk thing. And follow me. I don't know about you, but I would never want to go with anybody if they said, so today we're going to go to the mailbox, then we're going to pick up a gallon of milk, and we're going to go pay the gas bill. That's boring and routine. So I changed it up. You know what we're going to do today? We're going to go on a pirate adventure. And they go, what's a pirate adventure? I'm like, I don't know. But typically there's treasure involved. And so I allow my kids, to have the excitement with me. And that pirate adventure might be sight reading a brand new piece of music, or it might be going and playing for the librarian. We change it up and really try to minimize the classroom walls and maximize my kids' experience out in the school and the community. Something borrowed. This one's a little harder, but it's kind of selling what you're doing. For instance, I have this amazing colleague by the name of Mr. E, and I always am borrowing stuff from him because he writes the best lesson plans. And I let my kids know. And it's to the point where when they hear we're doing a Mr. E lesson plan, they all perk up and it's a good day. So, I mean, find those things that you could go and borrow. And finally, something blue. It's okay to share about the hardships in life. I mean, I wouldn't dwell on it, but for instance, I had a boy just this last week who broke up with his girlfriend. And I don't know if you've ever worked with a high schooler, but they dated for 3 weeks. So it felt like forever. He was already ready to propose. And and I let him know it was okay. It's okay when things don't work out. And that I guess the adage of there's more fish in the sea. But I talked about my own little heartbreak about going through high school and the different relationships I had and how they all weren't the right ones until I did meet my wife and how things are so much better. And I'm glad I wasn't stuck in that relationship I had my sophomore year. I bet some of you, I mean, maybe we have some high school sweethearts on the call, but probably not. Oh my goodness. More excitement. Life of a dad. Switching it up, building our dream and making things happen. I wanted had my kids to have a rich mindset, and we came up with this. I don't know if you remember, but the gentleman in the white, Zabion, we came up with this. And so we came up an acronym for rich. We wanted to have all of our students be rich. And so we defined rich. Rich is rigorous, always giving your best effort. Innovative. How many different ways can we play a piece of music? Can we play it forwards, backwards, just the first note, flip it upside down? Can we chop it up into little pieces of paper and tape it in different ways? Of course we can. We're going to think of every single outcome and then try to choose the very best ones and see if anything happens. Probably the most important is caring, making sure that everybody is cared for and that everybody has purpose, that in our program, you are your brothers and sisters keeper, and that every child matters. And last but not least, honesty. Honesty is sometimes a hard thing to be with people, but I believe it's always right. If you could be honest with your students, and those times where you have to let them know, hey, you're not really meeting the expectations that I have for you. Are you meeting the expectations you have for yourself? 9 times out of 10, they're going to say no. And then that's going to get us right back to the R. So how can we do a better job? How can we give our best effort? What are innovative ways we can do it? Because I really care about you. And hitting back to honesty. And it's just this rich circle. Because of that, we're able to get results. Last but not least, sustaining our dream. Find your child's island of competence. What do they do better than everybody else? Sometimes that's a hard thing being a talent scout. If winning is impossible, change the rules. It's your classroom. Principals, it's your school. You guys get to set the tone. Please make it work for your students. If you have policies and procedures that hurt kids, change them. Find value in all things. There are many kids on our campus who act out because they were labeled as a child that they were defective, that they never got 100% on their spelling tests, or that they're the class clown. And kids tend to go with what they've been taught. They'll play the part very well. You think I'm a bad kid? I'm going to show you a bad kid. The thing is those bad kids, or like I like to think is there is no bad kids. They just make bad decisions. You don't want to break them. You want to focus them. A lot of people think that, these type of kids are wild horses and I'm going to break them. No, I don't want to break kids. I want to show them their potential. I want to give them a lane to run in. And we'll talk about that in a moment. Celebrating the small victories. Sometimes that's breaking those rules all over again, where, bringing a cake to school because your kids didn't take last place. Or maybe they only got 2 questions right on the spelling test. Well, at least they got 2 words right. Last but not least, protecting your assets. Sometimes you need to go to the mat against other adults, sometimes even parents, to show that your work matters, that your children matter. We're going to talk in the next couple slides about that more in depth. But what would you do for your own child? Sometimes people in our profession talk very poorly to children. And I would never let somebody talk that way to one of my own children. And there's no way I'm going to let them talk like that to my students. So being an advocate is huge and making sure that dreams are possible. So let me introduce you to one of my students. For the next couple of students, I changed their names and I've very lightly, with this one in particular, I didn't change a thing. This is her. Sarah's 14. She gives profanity-laden monologues, meaning she uses the F word as a noun, verb, and adjective, and you know exactly what she's talking about. She tends to get into fist fights a couple times a week, if not every day. She has 5 F's and 1 A, and that A is in choir. She seeks praise and she loves dogs. It broke my heart because I heard a teacher yell at her, "I'm going to call your dad." And she said, "Great. When you get him on the phone, I'd love to talk to him too, because he walked out on my mom 2 years ago." Well, now we started to realize why she's angry. We had a student teacher conference where all of her teachers are around this table, and she's sitting there with her mom, and she's mad mugging like crazy and is upset. And the first teacher goes and says basically what a horrible person she is. There was nothing about her academics. There was nothing positive. It was just all negative. And the next teacher went, and then the next teacher went. After 5 teachers, Sarah was this tall, and her mom was this big. I don't know if you're seeing it on the camera, but her mom was ginormous, and it looked like she was ready to take her out. And it was sad. Finally, it was my turn to speak. And I knew that this was going to be confrontational. But I turned to my colleagues and I said, "I don't know who you're teaching, because that's not the Sarah I know. The Sarah I know is a leader in class. Obviously, she's passionate enough that if she's willing to get into a fist fight for her convictions, we have a leader on our hands. And she gets to choose if I'm going to have a good day or a bad day. So I'm going to make a deal with you, Sarah. If you could stop using the F word and profanity altogether, and you can keep your grades above a C, I'll pay for you to go on tour next year. I want you to sign a contract. No one goes for free. You're going to work. I'm giving you a job. Your job is to get good grades, to clean your room, to do all the things your mom needs you to do, because right now your family's going through it rough." Other things I did was I made sure, even though I'm not a dog person, on my slides there'd be a dog, and she knew secretly it was for her. I didn't have to say anything about it, but the minute I would go through a slide and there was a little puppy, I would give her, a quick glance, and I'd see that smile. It's reestablishing that relationship without even a word. Last but not least, I publicly would praise her anytime I had the opportunity. She's my prize singer. Being honest, she wasn't. She wasn't the best singer in that class, but she needed to be praised that way because that allowed her to grow. I bet you guys have a couple of Sarahs at your school, and I'm hoping that some of the stuff that we just talked about will help change the label that you have on her. With this one, I'm going to have some audience participation. When I first met Joe, it sounded like somebody was kicking a soccer ball against my wall. And I opened the door, and to my amazement, there's this giant boy headbutting the brick wall of my room with blood pouring down his face, just saying, "Joe's not good at anything." And I brought him in. And it was probably the best thing that happened for both of us. Joe had a lot of issues. He wanted friends. I tried putting him in band, and it just didn't work. I couldn't get him to play anything. I started with the tuba. It made sense. He's a big guy. I'm going to give him the tuba. Then I went another way. I gave him the flute, the smallest instrument, and had him play everything in between, even had him join the choir. And to no avail, it just wasn't Joe's cup of tea. Amanda, let me pose the question, and then I'm going to tap on Amanda. What would you do for Joe? How can we get Joe to fit in? How can we get him friends? So let me tell
Do
you a
you have
little
any
bit more
ideas?
about. Oh,
Yeah,
there's
if you
ideas
have any
coming in?
ideas, go ahead. I was just going to say, if you have any ideas, go ahead and share them in the question box, and I will share them.
Perfect. So I'm going to vamp a little bit while those are coming in. We have Joes in our schools too. We have the kids who can't do, but want to do. They want to have a life just like everybody else. and it seems so far and so impossible, and your heart breaks for them because they're giving their best every day and they're not given the credit for that best.
We have a few ideas coming in. Find a peer
Okay.
buddy, find a club for him, manager of a sports team. It will create inclusion. Keep trying and find something that does work, some kind of leadership role, something to make him feel important. I would ask him what his passion interests are and see how I can help him connect with others with those interests.
These are all
I
great.
would figure out what he is good at and place him in that area. I
So
have a
this is what we
situation like this right now. Sweet young man, we decide to start a friends club, developing now.
these are all beautiful. Somebody uh, I I don't know. It's amazing because somebody hit the nail right on the head of what I did. I was trying to put Joe into the band instead of making the band work for Joe. And this is where it became real beautiful. I made Joe the manager of logistics and transportation and how we just move things. I gave him skills on how to wire microphones and set up the stage. Very quickly, Joe became just this amazing guy in our program, and a lot of our success was because of him. He went on tour with us. I'm proud to say that after Joe graduated, his condition could have had him staying at home collecting Social Security checks. But instead, he became a stagehand in Portland, Oregon. He's working in a theater with musicians, doing exactly what he did in high school. He has purpose. He has joy. He has a life. Can you imagine if we can give that to every single one of our kids, especially the ones who really want to so bad, and it just seems like the cards are stacked against them? You just rearrange those cards and you make a playable hand, you know? And it's amazing how that can happen. My last student we're going to talk about is Michelle. When I first met Michelle, her mother brought her into my classroom, and she was smaller than all the other kids. I honestly didn't believe that she was supposed to be at middle school, and this is when I was teaching middle school. And she didn't make eye contact with me, and she was nonverbal. I was told that the whole reason why she was in my class was to give a prep to the special day teacher, and that if she was able to have my class as an enrichment class, let the other kids sing, and she'll just sit there and we'll figure out how to get her going. Well, on the first day, I could tell she was nervous and she didn't want to leave, and she felt very comfortable with her mother. And so I had her sit at my computer desk, sit in my chair. And I get through my class, and it's the first day of school, and I'm feeling good, like, yes, Brian, you did it. And I look over, and there she is. And I go, Michelle, where do you go? And she doesn't respond. She doesn't even look at me. I'm like, oh, okay. So I dig through her backpack and I find her schedule and I take her to her next class. And as we're walking, I feel this little hand reach up and grab my hand. She might as well have been grabbing my heart. I knew that this girl was special and that things were going to be a little bit different than what I expected. I dropped her off to her next teacher, and the days went, and I didn't give up on her. I would call on her, Michelle, do you know what this is? And it would be a treble clef or something. And I would give 15 seconds of silence. And I said, okay, well, we're not going to give up. Can anybody help Michelle out? And somebody would answer, and we kept on moving forward. It wasn't until 2 months into school that, for me, a miracle happened. I'm greeting all the kids by the door like I always do. And she was coming a little late. And I say, good morning, Michelle. And for the first time ever, I saw these blue eyes meet mine. And she says, good morning, Dr. McDaniel. She said my name. Her first words were my name. That was the proudest moment of my entire life. It was better than any award that anybody could give me. It was better than any performance. This girl felt comfortable enough to talk. So I called her mom. Said, Michelle talked today. And she said, anybody else here? I said, no, it was just me and her. And she eventually opened up, Turns out she could talk the whole time. But when she was a child, somebody said Michelle doesn't talk. So she didn't talk for 7 years. She just stopped. Now she talks a lot. We had her transition from special day to mild moderate to mainstreamed. She's a senior in high school now. She still sings in the choir and she has the voice of an angel. And she's probably my favorite student. Now, I know teachers are not supposed to have a favorite student, but she needed to be my favorite student, and I needed her in my life. She taught me patience. She taught me so much, and she taught me what can happen. Every child has possibilities, and it's not our jobs to judge or hold them back. It's our jobs to press them forward. And hands down, the experience I had with Michelle is what made me into the teacher I am today. So with the kids in your class, revision, double looking, see them not only for who they are today, but who they're going to be, who you want them to be, who they could be 5, 10, 20 years from now. Help them on their path. Keep the door open so that they'll continue to talk to you, even past the time that you have with them in that certain grade level or at that school. I don't believe any teacher's a failure. I really don't. I think all of us are on this progression, and the only way to fail is to just do nothing. As long as you keep working, as long as you keep trying, and even though you're not getting the results you want, you're a success. And I think you're good enough. And I think you're amazing. And I hope that you have all the happiness in the world that you could create in your own classroom, that you could build with your own students, and that you could build in your own community to just make things grow. I didn't tell you this, but that boy in the white, he's holding up our first state championship. I'm sorry, the boy holding up the state championship is Xavion. He stayed with me long after he graduated. And what happens when you win a state championship? You want to win again. So that's what we did. And what happens after you win 2 state championships? Well, you want to win the world. So we did that too. I took the kids to the Festival of Gold at the Segerstrom, and they performed in a world-class event. I wrote a grant for $175,000 so that my kids could attend. No one paid a dime to go there, and they stayed for a week performing at a world-class stage. It was one of the finest moments of my entire career. Well, what do you do after you have the world? You start all over again, and you make national champions at a middle school with a choir. And if you're a band guy, you know that choir is something you don't want to teach. So I had choir and band and took the kids. And what do we do after that? We did it again. I'm sad to say in 2018, we didn't compete because I was taking the kids to the Teacher of the Year Gala in Sacramento, California, and they performed for some of the top educators in our state. But in 2019, we won again. I've been extremely blessed with my career and with the people I have in it. I am now at a new school, and I know that the best is yet to come, and I'm always going to dream big. So before I let you go, I want you to remember to always raise your hand as high as it'll go and give your absolute best for your kids because they deserve it. At this time, we have a little time for Q&A, and I'm going to turn it over to Amanda to field some questions.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. McDaniel, for inspiring us all today. Anyone in the audience have anything to share or to ask Dr. McDaniel? We have a few minutes here before we close our webinar. So we do have a question that just came in. What do you do when administration still says no?
Well, in my book, and I hope if my administrators are watching, I have the best administrators in the world. So they typically don't say no. But when they say no, and let's just put something out there, you want to go on a field trip, and they say no, you're not pulling the kids for curricular times. I keep pushing. I'm a tough nut to crack, I guess. And if respect is not being served at the table, then you stand up and walk away. There's been twice I've left a school because of that reason. You know, if I'm not being treated the way that I need to be treated to be as most effective, then maybe that's time that you might need to switch schools. I don't say that lightly. I've worked at 5 different schools, but only twice have I left when I didn't feel like I was being respected as a professional and not being able to teach the way that I know I need to teach.
We're getting a lot of thank yous. Thank you for sharing your knowledge and your experience. One question, how do you get the parent involved with helping the student achieve their goal, especially the one with the broken family?
You make that kid shine. There's really no benefit of calling in saying how horrible this student is. What do you want them to do? Do you want the parent to beat the child or to berate them? But if you change the parent's lens, you know, try something new. Say all the good stuff they're doing and watch that kid change. I'll give you a quick case in point. I heard another professional talk about what we call the 2x10. It's 2 minutes for 10 days consecutive. And I had this student in particular who hated me. It was the first day of school. And with the 2x10, you could talk about anything other than school. So for the first 5 days, the student didn't want to talk to me at all. Don't talk to me. Don't look at me. I'm not going to talk to you. And so I just started talking about my family, saying my daughter wants to go to the mountains over the weekend. I don't know if we will. And then 2 minutes would go by and I'd jump right back into my lesson. And then we'd have our 2x10 buddies. And so on Friday, I talked to him, and then the weekend happened, and I forgot that we even had this conversation. And on Monday, he said, "So, did you do it?" "Did I do what?" "Did you take your kid to the mountains?" "Oh, I did." "Well, what'd you do?" That curiosity built a relationship. It only took 2 weeks, and I was able to work with that kid. But getting back to the question, you invite the parents and you make your kids shine as best as you possibly can. Always shine them in a good light. At least that's been my experience. There's other teachers who'll tell you to do it the other way, and quite frankly, I don't see how that works. It doesn't make sense to me. By calling and saying that your kid's bad, no one wants to hear that. You know, you're not gonna. It gets to the point where the parents get numb and they see the telephone number for the school and they won't even pick up. But when you make their kids shine, they'll do anything for you.
Thank you so much, Dr. McDaniel. I know that there are other questions coming in. There's many thank yous coming in, but we are about to close, but I know you're sharing your contact information. And I want to thank you all for joining us today. And I know you encourage folks to reach out to you if they have additional questions.
Yeah, please.
Big thank you. Yeah, go ahead, Dr. McDaniel.
Yeah. Any questions, I will respond to every email. Message me. I'm also on social media. I'm pretty easy to find. So if you would like to continue the conversation and I could help you in any way, that's kind of my purpose in life. I like helping people. So you're just making me a little bit richer. And I thank you for this wonderful audience, and I wish you all the best of luck.
And a big thank you to you, Dr. McDaniel. You provided us with a great inspirational presentation and tips for all of us that we can implement right away. I want to encourage all of you to visit, if you haven't already, our Sanford Teacher Award site. We have our nominations open until November 20th, and it's your chance to nominate the most inspirational teacher you know after we've all been inspired today. We are looking for those most inspirational teachers, and we will be awarding 51 teachers with $10,000, as well as a grand prize winner of $50,000. So please continue to share the inspirational teachers you know and encourage them to nominate themselves or nominate another inspirational teacher by November 20th. And thank you so much, Dr. McDaniel. And we look forward to seeing all of you when we kick off our 2020 webinar series on January 15th at 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. For this webinar, you don't want to miss Tom Wizenan, the 2019 grand prize winner of the Sanford Teacher Award. Mr. Wiz, as he is best known, will share how caring learning environments have inspired students in his classroom, his school, and his district. Once this webinar comes to a close, a survey will launch on your screen. It's very short, and we greatly appreciate your feedback. We read your feedback and take your responses seriously. To this day, your responses have helped us build more successful webinars. Thank you everyone for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you in 2020. Have a great day.